overseeing essays. I'm glad to be here today. Thank you for your patience. So yes, today we will be talking about the things that we have done in the course of the week, and we will go into something else that is very new as well. I know it's not like new to some of you, but yeah, it's new to many people, and we will be sharing knowledge today for the success of your IELTS. How have you been? Margaret, I hope everyone is fine. If you are watching us live on YouTube, thank you very much for being there. I got some messages that some of you are finding it difficult to join the class for those that have been on YouTube. There's a video on our YouTube channel that guides you on how to join the class, how to register and all of that. So please, you may need to watch that video so that you can get help as much as possible. We have talked about writing tax 1, or we've started talking about writing tax 1, and we've discussed the line graph, the bar chart as well. I sent in something that we could do about line graph. Let's see, admit. Okay. Something we did about a single line graph. There was a line graph that was just one line, and I know you have questions about how to report on them because of the structure. So we will discuss that today, and we'll run through the other line graph as well that we had. Okay, the other line graph that we had, that's the double line graph. We had a double line graph, and it was talking about carbon dioxide emission per person in the United Kingdom, in Sweden, in Italy, in Portugal, all between the years 1967 and 2007. And that's like 50 years. Yeah, 77, 87, 97. Yeah, 67, 77, 87, 97, 2007. It was over a period of 40 years. And we will use that as a sample to discuss our writing tax 1, the structure and everything again, just for you to understand more about what we've been discussing in the last couple of weeks. Now, the writing tax 1 is where you are expected to write not less than 150 words. Here you are giving a diagram, a picture or whatever, but you have an illustration, okay? It's different from tax 2 where you are just giving a question prompt. So in writing tax 1, we're expected to write not less than 150 words, and advised us that we should write not less than 160 words, okay? So it's not too few, all right? And then don't go beyond 170, 175 maximum. This is because in a multitude of words, errors are present. You need to keep your errors as much as possible, as low as possible, very low. Keep the error, in fact, make it error-free. And if you can't write an error-free essay, then let the errors be as minimal as possible, because they tend to subtract your mark for these things. We have been able to discuss about the band descriptors, which are the criteria for which you are graded. You are given that band score, all right? There are 4 of them. We did discuss them in this class. So if you don't know what they are, or you know the detailed information about what you're expected to do in each of these band descriptors, you need to go back to our 4th video, the writing tax 1 that was on was it bar chart? Or yeah, bar chart. If you will find it on the YouTube channel. It's been labeled, it's been named for you to go through. All right, so we have task completion or response, coherence and cohesion, lexical resource, then grammatical range and accuracy. All of these carry several information and specific information that is expected in your essay. All right, so in writing, there's also a structure. We did talk about the structure of the writing tax 1, where you are expected to have 3 paragraphs, and the information contained in the 3 paragraphs is dependent on the kind of question that you have. We also did make mention of the types of writing tax 1 questions that you will find. And that's where we talked about line graph, bar chart, pie chart, process graph, the flow maps. We talked about maps, all right. We talked about floor charts, all right. And then several other of them. I think there are about 7. And we started taking them one after the other. We started one after the other. We have discussed bar chart, we have discussed line graph. I will just run through what we did on line graph so that we can go to what we have for today. Remember that you should have your videos on because you'll be taken out of the class. Many of you are complaining you were in the class, your video was on and this is blah, blah, blah. If your video is on and your face is not showing, when I click on you here in my on my list, on the participants, it will show that your video is on, all right? So when you think that your video is on and you are taken out of the class and you start ranting and complaining, it means your video was off. So even if your video is on and your face, if your video is on and your face is not showing, I will know that your video is on from what I have here. But the moment your video goes off, you will be taken out of the class automatically, all right? This is because we are trying to like put many things under control. You and I know in the last couple of meetings that we have had, the things that are happening in the class when someone comes in and they begin to misbehave. But that's not the topic of discussion for today. Today, let's see. Please keep yourself in the class as much as possible. All right. That's why you should sort your network issues out before time to avoid going out of the class and then you find it difficult to get back to the class. Today, we'll be discussing the line graph that I sent in. I sent in a single line graph. All right. I want to get it and then share it. A single line graph. I'm sharing my screen with you. So let's see. This line graph. This is a single line graph, isn't it? And in this kind of line graph, can you all see my screen here? Yeah? You can see my screen? Good. This is a single line graph. It's just one line. And remember that from what we've discussed in the past, we talked about you just picking the variables and grouping them and all of that and writing on them. So when you have a single line graph like this, how do you group this kind of data? It's hard to group this data, isn't it? So what do? You write your introduction, which is constant for every writing tax 1 that we know. And how do you derive your introduction? Your introduction is gotten from what you have, I mean, the question prompt, all right? A paraphrase of your question prompt, and then your overall statement. That's how we'll come about our introduction, okay? That's how we'll come about our introduction. So when you have the paraphrase of the question prompt, like the question prompt is what is asking you, the above graph is an illustration of the number of people that ate potato in the United Kingdom from 2010 to 2020. That is your question prompt. And then they ask you, they said, highlight, you know, the important, relevant, whatever, using what not. So whatever question you have been given, that is your question prompt. That question prompt is what you are going to paraphrase. And you will paraphrase it making use of synonyms. And you get synonyms. What are synonyms? There are other words that you can use to represent a particular word without changing the meaning. So when you paraphrase, you are saying that question in a different way, using your own words, all right? Using your own words, you are not changing the meaning of the question prompt, but you are using other words to say it, more like you saying it in a different way. Okay, and I told us how to get synonyms. And I mentioned to us that in getting synonyms, ensure that the words you are using, they are words that can be used in the context of discussion. Okay, in the context of discussion, you need to be very careful as to be able to identify what words can be used in this context. Some synonyms, some words are actually the synonyms of that word that you are looking for, but you can't use them in making that sentence, which means whatever sentence that you make should be grammatically correct. The moment your sentence is not correct, then you will get a very low mark for grammatical range and accuracy. All right, and you will miss it. That means that your sentence is error-full, is full of error. At the end of the day, you end up subtracting your own marks instead of adding to yourself. Victoria, you are welcome to the class. It's been a long time I've seen you in class. Good evening. So yes, I was saying that you have an introduction when you see a single line graph as well, whether it is single or double, or whether it is the variables are just one, or there are many of them. When there are many, bring it to your brain that you need to group the data. You need to group these variables. When it is just one, know that you are reporting on that one. In that case, you're going to have what we call a summary. Somebody was asking that in writing task 1, there is summary. In writing task 2, there is conclusion. That is true, but you don't have summary for every type of writing task 1. So you need to identify which type of task or what kind of question am I going to write a summary for. All right, you write a summary when you have this kind of question that I'm sharing with you now. When you have that kind of question, then you are going to be writing a summary. You will definitely be writing a summary. Let's see. Why is it no longer showing? Okay, so this was a particular one that I sent to the group. So how do we report on this? Who cannot see it? I'm sure you all can see it. And it says that the graph shows underground station passenger numbers in London. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Underground station passengers in London. So it's just the underground station, just one underground station, though they did not mention it, but it's just one underground station. So what are you going to do? You are going to have a paragraph for this one. Can you all see my cursor? Which is your introduction and an overall statement. Overall, during the day, what do you see in this kind of statement, in this kind of question? What's going to be our overall statement? I told us that an overall statement is what you can see at a single glance at your question prompt or the graph or whatever you have been given. All right, sometimes it could be about the steps, sometimes steps in a process. Sometimes, for instance, like in this case now, I am going to say that there is fluctuations all through the day, but the peak period was at what time is this one that is on 400? You pick the highest and you can pick the lowest to it. The peak period is this time and you can pick the lowest. The lowest is around 100 people, at about 100 people, which happens around 16:00, that's around 4 p.m. So at about 8 a.m. is where it peaked, and at about 4 p.m. is where it has the lowest. Okay, so it usually starts very slowly on a low, whatever, at about 100 or thereabout. Then it increases as the time goes on until around 8 where it has the peak, and then again to increase around 6 p.m. but a little lower than 400. So what's going to be like your overall statement for this kind of a question? What would be your overall statement? Sorry, I need to admit people into the class. Okay, fine. So what will be your overall statement? You talk about the peak period, that overall, all right, fluctuations are noted all through. There's no particular time that that you say it was flat. No, it was never flat at any point. So your fluctuations were noted. It was noted to fluctuate. Passengers fluctuated on the underground station all through the day, but peaked at about 8 a.m. you don't have to mention the number because you are going to be giving a report. In your overall, please, some of you wrote the overall. I read everything. Everybody that sent something to the Telegram group, I did not comment on all, but I read everything. So I'm just going to comment based on what I have seen. Some of you in your overall statement, you are giving me quantities and numbers. You don't do that. You don't mention percentages, okay? You don't mention percentages. You can mention the name of the country or whatever. Or for instance, we're talking about underground station. You can talk about the passengers, but you're not going to mention that the passengers were 400 at 8 a.m. No, you can talk about the peak period, which is 8 a.m., but you're not going to mention that 400 passengers and all and all and all. It's not necessary in your overall. Do you understand? Please ensure that you have your video muted. If not, I will mute you and then I'll take you out of the class. All right. So in this kind of question, when you have this kind of question, what do? What you do here is you are in your second, that's your second paragraph. Now, after the introduction, you talk about this, then you give a summary as the third paragraph. This is the kind of question that I'm expecting you to give a summary. Do you understand? You are not expected to give a summary where you have enough data, enough variable to write on. You summarize something when you don't have enough to cover for your third paragraph. I see all this. I have muted everybody. So why are you unmuting yourself? Okay, so you have an overall statement with the introduction. The introduction is a paraphrase of your question prompt together with the overall statement, which is something that you can see at a single glance. Then you have the first paragraph, which is your introductory paragraph. Now you go over to write an overview. In your overview, for other kind of questions, it depends on what you are asked. It depends on what you have. I tell you to group the data and report in one paragraph, two paragraphs, giving you 3 paragraphs in all. 3 paragraphs in all. That's what you will have for a writing task 1. But in this kind of single line graph, where you have just one line and you are not going to group them, okay, you're not going to group them here, you will write your report on that one graph, on that one line, reporting on the variable, that single variable, from the beginning to the end in your second paragraph, and then you have a summary as your third paragraph. Who is confused? Nobody. Good. Thank you very much. So today we are going to move over to another thing. We have discussed line graph, we have discussed bar chart, and we have discussed a line graph where you can group data and a line graph where you cannot group the data. So when you cannot group the data, you write on the single line variable that you have and you give me a summary. When you can group the data, you separate your data, you have a dividing line. You write about the first part, you write about the second part. That way you still have your 3 paragraphs. Do we understand? Okay, yeah, we do understand. That's good. So today we will be talking about the process graph. We'll be talking about the process diagram. Occasionally, I know that in IELTS, if you have been doing what we asked you to do, I told you to go get Cambridge 15 and go through them. Get Cambridge 15, go through the questions, see the writing task 1 questions that are there. When it's time for task 2, we will also go through it. So occasionally you will have to describe a process in the test instead of a graph. It's not always about graph. Although this type of diagram is less common in the test, however, it's still important for you to understand how to tackle this kind of questions when it arises. And that's the reason why we are discussing it today. A process diagram tests your ability to explain what happens, okay, in stages and to give a proper report of all the steps that are involved in that process. The skill of you paying attention to details will come really, really handy in this type of question. The reason is because they expect you not to ignore any step at all. So you need to take cognizance of every step. You need to pay attention to every detail that you find in the step or in the process. So processes, we have several stages that are, like they are in order. So you should start at the beginning and describe each stage through to the last one. This will increase your mark for cohesion. I told us that cohesion has to do with the progression of your work, isn't it? So if you start from the beginning, you follow it, you keep going to the next stage, to the next stage, and to the next stage. That is the way that you are expected to report. Not talking about the beginning and then going to the last. If you talk about the beginning and you move to the last, it means that there's no flow in your work. At the end of the day, you are just rigmaroling and you scatter your work and your points, and the examiner will help you to cut your mark short. It requires you to use, articles like countable nouns where it is needed, things like and, they, and you should also use sequences like first, subsequently, after all that, after that, next to it, finally, all those sequencers. You need sequencers, all right? So, and you make use of verbs of processes to describe your actions. You use verbs or processes to describe your actions. That is like you putting something in, taking out something, all right, changing things or throwing away things completely. Verbs like inserted, verbs like you extracted, verbs like transformed, discarded, and so on. Okay, now you in your description of a process graph, there are certain things that are expected of you. You are still expected to follow the structure like we discussed. The structure is still 3 paragraphs where you have an introduction and an overview. I told us from the beginning that in your overview, the information you give to your examiner in your overview is dependent on the kind of question that you are asked. We all know and we have agreed that the introduction is the same, a paraphrase, all right, and an overall statement. Now, what should you write in your overview in a process graph? This will bring us to the steps, all right? So in your overview for a process graph, you need to have a dividing line in the process. You need to have a dividing line in your process. When you have the dividing line in your process, then you have grouped the data into 2, which will give you the 2 paragraphs that is expected for your overview. Do you understand? If it is a step of making something, for instance, you can count the number of steps. If there are 12, you can divide it into 6 and 6. That is 2 parts now, so it will be like 6 and 6. If there are 11, you can do 5 and 6. You can do 5 and 5 up first and 6 below, or 6 and then 5. It depends. If it is an even number, you get to have a proper dividing line. But if it is an odd number, you get to use your head. Sometimes it may even be an even number, but you need to have an equal number of steps, okay, in your processes, depending on what the processes look like. If one process you think is longer than the other, you can shorten it by removing, like if, for instance, process number 4 is bigger, is longer, it will take me more time to explain maybe 2 or 3 sentences more, then I may like to join process number 4 and 5 to the first part and then have the last 7 processes behind, depending on the question that you have. Does it make sense to anybody? Does this make sense? Yeah? You can raise your hand and just signify that it makes sense so that I can continue. And I'm sure that I'm not leaving anyone behind. Yeah? Do you understand what we are saying tonight? You understand? That's good. So today we will be doing one, but before we go, like I said, I will explain. There are vocabularies that you use to describe a process graph. And these vocabularies are based on the steps in the process and then your sequencers, all right? Those are the things that you're going to be using. The first step is, for instance, is a phrase that you can use. The first step in the process is, all right? The first stage in this process is, the process begins with, the process commences with, in the beginning of the process, comma, then you continue. These are all phrases that you can use, all right, to start the process. talking about the beginning. Now, when you have talked about the beginning, for instance, I said the first step in the process of making potatoes, we had one that we did, but we talked about, was it fish pie or something? The first step in making that fish pie was to deliver the potatoes to the factory, and then it is washed and cleaned and kept, all right? So the following steps, what kind of things do you use? What kind of verbs, what kind of sequencers do you use? Things like subsequently, things like after this, things like the next step is, or followed by, all right? Then in the following stages, you can say things that like following this process, all right? These are all sequencers that you can use. Then when you want to talk about the last part, or you are concluding in the last part of your process graph, the process finishes with, the process concludes with, the last step in this process, the last step in the process is, all right? So these are things you need to take note of them, because it makes your work more organized and it shows your examiner that you know what you are doing. Okay? Do we understand? Now, what are the step-by-step things that you need to note in writing on a process diagram? Number one, like the others, is for you to read and understand the process. Read and understand the question, okay? And then understand the process. Who is this person? Who is this person? I'm suspecting this name, but what do I do? What do I do? Sorry, I can't let you in. I have a very strong instinct that it has helped me over the years. If it's a genuine person, they'll send message to the Telegram group, isn't it? They'll send message talking about. So yes, sorry about that. I'm just being careful for all of us, because the noise and the distraction is really not helping our learning at all. So you need to read and understand the question and the processes that are involved. Then you underline your keywords. If your brain is sharp enough just for you to know the keywords, is fine. But like what I do is I use my pen or my pencil. There's nobody that is going to penalize you for that, even though you give them back all of the questions and all that. Nobody is penalizing you for making small jottings, all right, on that paper that you have. So yes, you need to underline your keywords, all right? Underline your keywords. As you underline the keywords, get synonyms for them, then paraphrase the keywords where it is possible. I know that there are some words that we cannot paraphrase, but as much as possible, try to get synonyms for every word. If you can't get for every word, that's fine. Get as much as you can get. Okay, then in that process, for instance, we're talking about the process graph now. If there are any areas where there was no label or a name given to you, you can give it a name if you like. You can give it a name. So you can label any unlabeled part to make the reporting easier for you as you go along. Then you have to identify a logical start point. How do you do that? By noting which step starts it. Sometimes the first step may not be the first step. And then when you are now going to report, you mention that first step that is not the first step. If we come across a sample like that, we will solve it so you understand what I'm saying better. You identify a logical midpoint as well, because when you identify a start point, remember it's a process and there are steps that are involved in it. So when you identify the first thing, that's the logical start point, then the logical midpoint is where you're going to have your dividing line, isn't it? Then you identify the logical endpoint as well for that process. You can number the process. If you number the process, it will help you to know how many processes are involved. Then go ahead to write your report. Try as much as possible to proofread your work, okay? Proofread your work before you submit, because when you proofread your work, you have the opportunity to make small corrections, like dotting your T, your I's and crossing your T's to make them look like a proper T and not L. All right. You know, if you write capital letter T for some of us and you don't cross it well, it looks like an L. And at the end of the day, they'll think it's a misspelling of words, isn't it? They'll think it's a wrong spelling and you get your mark cut off for all of that. Ensure that that does not happen to you. So today, we see the structure, all right? I just want to give us this information that you need to rephrase the question and give an overall statement of the process as well. In your overall statement, you can name the number of steps, okay? If there are equipments that are used, or if it is a step where equipments are involved, you can say the number of equipments, or the materials, or you note, you know, the start and the end points. So these are information that can come in your overall statement, which will give you your introduction. Then for your overview, you group the steps and write the first part as the first body paragraph, and then the other part as the second paragraph, ensuring that no step is overlooked or left unaccounted for. Do we understand? Now ask your questions. Ask your questions before you go on.
Hello, ma.
Good evening.
Good evening, ma. Ma, please, can you come again with the overview? You said we'll group our data into two.
Tell me what you know about the overview. Then I will know where your knowledge labs is, then can cover it.
Okay, you said that the overview, that's where you talk basically about the data that you have in the question.
Yes, that's correct. Is that all you want to know? Is that what you want to
Yes,
clarify?
ma'am, but there's a particular thing you said. You said in the overview that we should group the I am not how do I put it? Ma'am, please just say that in the statement you made concerning the overview. You said something about grouping the
You
data.
group the steps in your overview. You group the steps and write the first part as the first paragraph for your overview, and then the other part as the second paragraph for your overview, ensuring that no step is overlooked or missed out. That's what I said. That's a process graph. Remember that there are steps in the process. And so you need to group what steps you are going to discuss about first and what steps you are going to discuss about second. The good thing with the process graph is the fact that you don't need to pick steps from here and there to come and join together. No, you know, because you have to write in a sequential order, there has to be that cohesion, that progression in your work. You need to know that when I start from the number one process, what is the next? What is it? At what point am I going to stop writing my first overview paragraph? And at what point am I beginning or starting my second paragraph for the overview? Do you understand? If there were 12, I did mention, and you like to talk about 6 first, then you have a dividing line between number 6 and number 7 steps, isn't it? But if there are 12, for instance, and you discover that your number 4 point, for example, has more, your number 4 process or step has more to write on, you can decide to do 5 and 7. Instead of 6 and 6. So you need to use your discretion to know what exactly you are going to be writing on. Do you understand? Do you now understand, or you still need more clarification?
I understand now, ma. Thank you, ma.
You are sure you understand now, yeah?
Yes, ma.
Okay. Any other question, please?
Yes, ma'am. Please, I have a question.
Go ahead, darling.
Please, ma'am, how do we end in this process diagram, the process diagram? Since we are dividing the steps into two, how do we how do we end the first paragraph? I mean, or the first overview paragraph. How do we end it, and how do we start the second or the third paragraph? Actually,
Okay. What we do is to use sequencers and nouns and phrases that are related. And that was why I did make mention of the words that you can use to start, to continue at the beginning of the process, of the beginning of this teaching. Do you remember the phrases that I mentioned?
yes, ma'am. You said
Those
the first step in the process. Then
is, so that is how to
the
begin.
beginning of the
So
process.
that is how to begin it.
Yes,
That is how to begin. I think the first part of the process is, or the beginning of this process is, or the first step in this process is, those are phrases that you can use to start. Then I talked about
to start.
sequencers. What are the sequencers that you got?
Subsequently, the next step is
Okay.
then
Okay.
in the following stage. mm,
Okay. So those are
that's the
sequencers.
way I
Those are
want
the
to do.
phrases that you can use to continue writing, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
So do you now
Okay.
understand your question?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you sure you now understand your question?
Yes, I understand.
Good. So that is the reason for those statements and that teaching before the beginning, so that you can understand
Okay.
what you are expected to do from the beginning. All right? You know what you are expected to do from the beginning. So we will do any other question, please, because we will do a classwork now like we used to do. Any other question?
Yes,
Whose hand
ma'am.
is up? Yeah, go ahead.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
I understand that during or while writing the diagram of process, we have to write in sequence. But my question is concerning, you said if at a point or maybe in a stage, stage 4 or stage 5, we have more to write on. You said we can group it with another stage. Does it mean I can group my stage 1 with stage 4? Then group my stage
You
2.
made a mistake there.
Okay.
Let me cut you so we don't waste too much time on that. You made a mistake there. I said that, for instance, you have 12 steps. It's
Okay.
logical for you to have 6 and 6, isn't it?
Yeah.
But if you discover that there's a step, for instance, your step 4 or 5 is going to make your sentence, your paragraph for that too long, right? You can decide to go for 4 and 8 or 7 and 5. Do you understand what I'm saying now?
Okay.
You can decide to take first 5 steps first, then 6 steps, or 7
Okay.
steps second, or whatever. You can, that's what I'm saying. That it depends on what
Okay.
is involved, and that's where you need to use your discretion, yeah?
All right. Okay, now I
Which
get.
means that it's not compulsory for you to have even numbers in your steps. That's what I'm saying overall.
Okay.
From this explanation, it means that because you have even numbers in the steps, you must not divide it into even numbers or equal number of steps in the paragraphs. It's not compulsory
All
for you
right.
to do that. You use your discretion to know how to group your data.
All right.
Okay?
Yes.
There's a
Thank you.
question from Cambridge 8 that I want us to discuss because it is related. although it is a double one, it's a double step, which means there are two of them already, so you can discuss one in one overview and discuss one in the other overview. I think this is even the wrong example to use for this one until I explain that one. Then we can, let me see if I get another one instead. I open another one now and show you. I think it's better. Let's discuss this one. Sorry, the network is kind of misbehaving with opening some things here, and it's been happening for some time, but we'll get to it. Just give me a minute, please. It's coming up gradually. Let's see. Screen. Let's see this question. Any other question? If you have a question, ask so that we can be answering that while I'm solving this problem here, this little problem that we have. Any question, please? If you are watching us on YouTube, I'm still going to send this to, I believe that like every member of the YouTube channel, or anyone that is subscribed to the YouTube channel rather, should be on the Telegram group, hopefully. If you are not, it may be what something that you want to do. Join the Telegram group so that when you see these questions on there, you can answer them or just go through them and see what you can have or benefit from them. All right, because currently it's impossible for me to come to the YouTube group to make corrections and all of that. There are so many things going on and I've been too busy to be able to do that, and I want you to benefit. All right, that's the reason why I'm saying this. So it will be worth you going to join the Telegram group so that where I'm still going to post whatever we do here at the end of the day. I'll post the picture on there, I'll post the diagram on there, the question will be there for you to be able to do it yourself as well. Because I know that some of this screen, when we share the screen, is blurred and you can't see well, but you can hear us well. If you listen to the explanation, then you can get the diagram in the Telegram group and you are able to study or to join in the participation. Okay, so let's share our schema. Is it all right if I only wrote one paragraph in my overview? No, it's not all right. Don't write one paragraph in your overview, please, because you have a requirement to fulfill a specific number of words. You have a requirement to fulfill a specific number of words. I'm sharing my screen now with you, and we need to say the question so that we can discuss it. Yeah. Can you see my screen? Chinwe, you are smiling. Have you seen this question before? Or you love the question? So going by what we have discussed, the diagram illustrates the process that is used to manufacture bricks for the building industry. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Write at least 150 words. Remember, write at least 160 words. Ensure that your sentences are error-free. All right? Your grammar should be correct. Okay? So that you can score a good mark from your examiner. Do we understand? What do we need for this task? Let's see if we can discuss it, then go ahead to write it. Now, we have what? Actually, I had a process graph in my IELTS, reading. They just did this and then labeled it and were asking me this and this used for this. You just give it a name, and the name was in not more than 1 or 2 words. Oh God, reading is something else, but it's easy if you know the tips. All right, so the brick manufacturing process is what we have as the heading of this task, okay? And here we have a digger, and this is clay, all right? What happens to the digger? The digger goes for the clay, and from there, it pours it where? Into the roller. And before it gets into this roller, it has to go through the metal grid, and then it's mixed with sand and what? And water for the next stage. This goes into molding. All right. In the mold, there are wire cutters in the mold, and at the end of the day, it brings out what? Bricks. These bricks are allowed to dry, all right, for about 24 to 48 hours. Are you seeing the arrow? You need to follow it. If there's no need for you to follow the arrow, they will not give you any arrow as a guide. Okay, they are allowed to dry between 24 to 48 hours, after which what happens to them? They go through the drying oven for 24 to 48 hours, and in the clean there is about 200 to 980 degrees, and first of all, then it goes over to 970. That's the heat, they're increasing it, and this happens between 48 to 72 hours, where it is cooled in the chamber. And from there they do what? They load them into the lorry for delivery. They stack them up. The dried bricks are stacked up. From there, it is loaded in the lorry. Can you see the lorry? And then for delivery. How many steps do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I like the disparity. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, you can see that there's something about these steps. For example, the steps here on this step, this particular step, can you see my cursor? Yeah, this particular step has more things for you to write than this one, isn't it? Because here it goes through different temperatures, isn't it? Goes through different temperatures. In the drying oven, it is allowed for 24 to 48 hours. Okay, and then inside this kiln, the kiln, the temperatures are increased from various levels, from 200 to 980, and then it moves over to higher one, okay, 970 to 1300 degrees centigrade. Then is allowed to cool for 48 to 72 hours in the cooling chamber. When these bricks are cooled in the cooling chamber, it proceeds to be stacked. From where it goes over into the lorries, it's loaded into the lorries for what? For delivery to the consumer. First of all, what is the first step? The first step in this process is the digging of clay. The digger digs up the clay, and then it's filtered through a metal grid into the roller. This roller rolls it mixed with sand and water, and it goes into the wire cutter, into the mold. Okay, there's the mold, there's the wire cutter. So it goes into the mold or the wire cutter here, where it is now cut, because this one has to be mixed. The clay is mixed with sand and water. All right, then it is put into what? The wire cutter, into the mold, and then the wire cutter now makes the bricks in pieces. These bricks are now arranged into the drying oven, allowed for between 24 to 48 hours, after which they are put in a kiln and then exposed to different levels of temperatures, beginning from what? The moderate temperature 200 to 980, and then to the high temperature 970 to 1300 degrees centigrade, after which they are arranged in the cooling chamber to cool off for 48 to 72 hours. The cooled bricks are arranged into stacks and then later loaded into the lorry for what? For delivery to the consumers. I've explained this thing, let nobody come and make mistake. Now, if I want to write my introduction, what do you think are my keywords here? The diagram illustrates process, all right, manufacture, bricks, building industry. These are all my keywords. How do I get an overall statement? Overall statement here, what did I tell us are the information that can be contained in an overall statement? Have a look. Overall statement, you group the steps and write, no, it's not here. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? There's somewhere. I wanted to show you. The kind of information that should be in your overall statement here: number of steps, the equipment used, materials, notes, the start and the end point. These are the things I want to see in your overall statement. For some of you that are wise, you can take a screenshot. And when you take this screenshot, you can use it to guide yourself as you write. And at the end of the day, you will master what you have been practicing, isn't it? Yeah? You master whatever you have been practicing. So let's go back to our question. Let's go back to our question. This is the question. It's time for class participation. Chippy Loveling, give me another word for diagram.
Picture.
Is picture okay in this context? Yeah? I'm just asking you a question. Is it okay in this context? It's okay in the context. You are not even confident. Are you a nurse?
Okay. Yes, I am.
You need to be confident of your answers. Okay, you need to be very, very confident, because you will encounter patients and patient relatives who will ask you questions. And if you are not sure of your answer, they tell you she knows nothing.
Okay.
All right. Okay,
Yes,
so yes, Victoria, give me another word for process.
Steps. Process. There's stages. Steps.
Okay, stages, steps. They can all be used in this context. Manufacture, uncle.
Produce. Construct or build.
Produce.
Okay, produce.
You have not reached where you are constructing. The construction industry is the building industry. All right. Construction industry, we can say building companies, construction companies, construction industry. Do you understand? So bricks, what are the other things for bricks?
Blocks.
They are building blocks, isn't it? Yeah? Okay. And then what did I, okay, illustrates. I missed a step. Illustrates. What other word can I use for illustrates?
Shows or portrays.
Thank you very much. Sweetie.
Oh, that's me.
Can you give me a paraphrase of this question prompt?
The picture depicts the steps that is used to produce bricks for building industry.
Thank you very much, but you are wrong in one aspect, and I always like 100% success. That's me for you. Steps are not used. Steps are involved. Processes are used. Do you see now?
Yes.
So you need to be very conscious of your grammar. Steps are involved, isn't it? But processes can be used. So the processes that is used to manufacture, or now you are going to paraphrase, you are saying that the steps that are involved in the production of what? Building blocks for construction companies. And you get it? All right? Priscilla Egwim, Can you give me an overall statement for this? Remember, I already showed you what information you should mention in your overall statement. Can you give me an overall statement for this?
Overall topics.
I'm waiting.
Overall, the process involves 7 processes, beginning with how clay are produced, then follow 2 processes to the end where bricks are manufactured.
Okay, now in your statement, I heard processes 4 times. All right, I heard processes 4 times. I don't know other words for processes, number 1. Number 2, there's too much repetition. All right, and then you are not giving me the information I want.
Okay.
You can't say the process is the process again. No, already you have mentioned the steps, that these are the steps that are involved in the manufacturing or production, all right, of building blocks for construction companies. Overall, there are about the number of steps. How many steps are here? There are about 7 steps, beginning with what? The digging up of clay.
Okay.
Beginning with what? The digging up of clay. Then how does it end? And ending with the clay being delivered to the companies or to the consumers or whatever. That way, you have in a way covered the information. Remember I told about a particular information I'm expecting? You have in a way covered the information that I need. The number of steps, the equipment, I did mention the digger, and then the material, the clay that is there is the material. Then note the end and the start point. The start point, the end point was what? Digging up, and then the end point was delivery. At the end, you have a qualitative overall statement. Do you understand now?
Yes, ma'am.
Olubayo Michael, can you please put the introduction together? What everyone has said about the introduction, put the paraphrase statement and the overall statement together to give me an introduction. I'm waiting, sir. I've asked you to unmute.
Okay. I said the picture outlined the process that are involved in the manufacturing of block, beginning with digging of clay and ending up with delivery. Generally, it can be noted that manufacturing of blocks started with digging. Yeah.
Okay, he's already correcting himself. Yeah, go ahead. Okay. Correct yourself, go ahead, finish, yes. And let's hear the cooked food.
I just jumped the...
so that's why you have another chance to make that correction, yeah?
Yes, ma'am. The picture outlines the process that are involved in the manufacturing of blocks for building industry.
Okay.
Overall, it can be noted that manufacturing of blocks begins with digging of clay and ending with delivery. Am I right? So I
I'm not
think the
saying you are
overview is
wrong.
too short.
I'm not, that's not an overview. You're writing and you're giving me an overall statement, and I expect you to put, that's why I left this
Yes, ma'am.
information here. Number of steps, equipment, materials, or start and end. If you can't get all, you should
Okay,
get
okay,
3
okay,
of the information there. You should get 3. If you can't give me all, then give me about 3 of it. Yeah?
okay. Yes, ma'am.
So go
Okay.
ahead and correct
Over.
yourself.
Yes, ma'am. Can you help me put the picture back up?
It's here now.
Okay. Overall, it can be noted that manufacturing of clay begins with digging using a digger,
Okay.
and also using a digger which is passed through a roller
You're already
to the
explaining the process, bros. You have gone way, way too hard ahead of us. You have gone
okay.
too much ahead of us. Now,
I get
an
that.
introduction is where you have a paraphrase statement. The paraphrase statement is where you use synonyms from your question prompt to make the same statement without changing the meaning.
Okay.
An introduction contains a paraphrase of your question prompt and an overall statement. An overall statement is what you can see at a single glance or just merely looking at this, what you can conclude. It's more like a conclusion from the beginning of your work, all right? More like a conclusion from the beginning. So overall, what can you see? It can be noted that there are about 7 steps involved in the production or in this process, all right?
Yes,
Beginning
ma'am.
from the digging of clay by the digger and ending with what? The delivery of the bricks or the blocks. Now that I've used blocks, I can now use bricks. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
The delivery to the industries.
Okay.
Now I have mentioned the equipment, I have mentioned the steps involved, I have talked about what else. I have tried to cover the information that is expected in the overall statement. I have also been able to paraphrase using synonyms, this question prompt that is here for you to see now.
Yes, ma'am.
All right?
Yes, ma'am.
So you have not done the right thing, but I expect now that you know the right thing, I expect you to do it. It's time for our class activity. This is 8:20, 9:20 by your time, I understand. So you are going to, I'm leaving it on the screen, all right? Because some of you now, you will start before you finish me. Okay, so I'll leave it on the screen for you to see. We have tackled this in a way in this class so that you can write the right thing. Class activity. The rules, number 1, type everything together to send. Write an introduction and 2 paragraphs for your overview. It is up to you to know where your dividing line should be in this work. But if you listened to the explanation, you would have known where the dividing line is. So if you start from 1, make sure you end. Then your second paragraph, that's the last paragraph, your second overview paragraph, you can now go and say furthermore or in addition or still in this process is acceptable. Still in this process, you can start your next paragraph like that. Furthermore, in addition, you are still trying to explain something, all right? Or going further in this process, you mentioned 1 line of something about your last process where you ended. For instance, if I ended it here, for example, I'll now say, going further in this process, after drying the bricks then they are passed through a kiln exposed to different temperatures, all right? Beginning from the moderate one, this, and then to the high one, followed by the cooling of the blocks or the products in the chamber, after which they are stacked together and then arranged or packaged in a lorry for delivery. That is the end. You don't need any summary in this kind of question. You are finished explaining the process. You are asked to do what? To explain the process. They say summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features. Everything here is a main feature. Don't mind the examiners. There's nothing that is not a main feature. Some people will tell you they say main features. It does not apply to a process graph. Do you understand? Main feature may apply to some line graphs, to some things that you may want to neglect some steps, but not here. In this particular work that you are expected to do, I want you to explain every detail here, including the sand and water arrow here. The sand and water is added to what? To the clay that is dug up, all right? And then it is passed through a mold. Using the wire cutter, it is cut into various sizes of bricks. And these bricks are now allowed to dry in the oven for between 24 to 48 hours. From there, they proceed into the kiln, exposed to different levels of temperature, beginning from the moderate one of 200 to 980, and then to the high temperature of what? 870 to whatever. After that, what happens to them? They are arranged in the cooling chamber to cool off for 48 to 72 hours. From there, they are stacked, all right, and then loaded into the van for what? For delivery to the industries or to the consumers or to the building, whatever. They are allowed, they are now arranged and then they are delivered. Who does not understand this? Sincerely, I don't understand. Let me see your hand. I think process graph is about process, this chart is about the easiest, isn't it? It's about the easiest. Anyway, whatever you want. Okay, Folorun Shaw, what is your question, please? Folorun Shaw, what is your question?
No, please, I don't understand the whole process. I can only understand the overview, the introduction part.
Where is she? Where is the person talking? Where is the person talking? Folorun Shaw, raise your hand. Raise your hand. Let me see you. Can anybody see her in this class? So your video is off and you are in my class. And you are bold enough to ask a question in this class.
It was a mistake. It was a mistake, ma. Hello. Hello, my.
I can hear you. I can hear you. I was about to remove you.
Yes.
Anyway.
No, it was a mistake.
That's fine. Please, for whatever reason.
Okay, ma.
That's why you were not visible. You don't understand anything. Have you been in this class before? Have you gone through our previous videos or our previous lessons about writing tax 1?
Yes.
What do you know about the structure? What do you know about the structure of the writing tax 1?
Ma? The structure of the writing tax 1.
Yes, ma'am.
The first thing to do is the paraphrasing.
Okay.
Then after paraphrasing, you write the overall statement. Then you talk about the highest, the lowest, the key features of the whole statement.
Okay. Then?
Hello, ma.
I can hear you. After that, what do you do?
Then after that, you move to the body, the paragraph.
Okay, so your body. Where is your question now? You know what to do. So where is your question coming from?
Conclusion, I think.
We don't conclude in writing tax 1. It means you have not gone through our teachings in writing tax 1. If you have gone through our teachings in writing tax 1, you won't be asking this. But anyway, writing tax 1 structure expects you to have 3 paragraphs. These 3 paragraphs, number 1 paragraph is called the introduction. The introduction is where you have an overall statement and a paraphrase. They are together. They are not two paragraphs. They are just various sentences put together with your cohesive devices, linking words in a paragraph. That gives you your introduction. Then the overview. For every type of writing task 1, the overview, the information in the overview varies depending on the kind of question that you are asked. Okay, the information contained in your overview varies. I don't want to say body paragraph because we use body paragraph more in writing task 2. The overview is your report. And in that report, you are expected to produce 2 paragraphs, which added to your introduction will give you 3 paragraphs that are the structure for the writing task 1. Now, in your line graph, I said the overview, your overall statement, you have what? In that overall statement, what I expect, the information that I expect is you mentioning the highest, the lowest, the more prominent one. That is for a line graph or a bar chart. Today, we are talking about a process graph. And I said that the information expected in your process graph should be what? In the process graph, the information I expect to see in your overall statement should be what? The number of steps involved, the equipment used, the materials there. Then you should note the start and end point. And I've said this, I've kept it, I said, take a screenshot. Are you doing something else that is distracting you from this class or something? Because if not, I've explained the same thing like over and over again, and I'm explaining it now, all right? So your introduction in a process graph, remember I told you that your information is dependent on your question type. Now today we are dealing with a process graph. Please remove everything you know about line graph. Keep it in one part of the brain, all right? Maybe in the temporal lobe, leave it there. Now open up the occiput and let us see what is in the occipital lobe. Put this one so that when you are asking, all of them can create various pathways, and when you need them, they can flow in. All right, for you to have your information handy and then you can write. Today, we are discussing what? The process chart. This process chart is involving steps in production or in anything, steps in a process. And these steps in a process has a different way of report. And I said that for you to write the statement, the introduction for it, paraphrase the question prompt using synonyms, then write an overall statement. In the overall statement, tell me specific information about the steps that are involved, the number of steps, the equipment used, the materials, all right? And then tell me, you should note for me the beginning and the end of the process, of the steps, of the stages. Go to your overview, have a dividing point, have a beginning point, and have a logical end point. Your beginning should be the beginning of the process. And I did say that you should group your data, where I said you divide into 2 because of what? You are expected to give 2 paragraphs. So divide all the processes into 2 groups. Pick one group, the first group, write it in the first paragraph of your overview, and then the second one should be in the second paragraph of your overview. There's no need for a conclusion. There's no need for a summary. All you need to do is give me an introduction, give me 2 paragraphs for your overview. Do you now understand? Funsha, do you now understand? Mary, looks like Folorunsho is your surname. Mary, do you understand now, yeah? Good. Sweetie, what is your question?
Okay, thank you. I'm still a bit confused about the introduction. Like you made mention of we are having to mention the equipment used for the overall, sorry, not the introduction, the overall. So I'm not so sure. Is it how many equipment are we permitted to mention for the overall?
How many of the steps are you talking about in your overall? You are just mentioning the beginning and the end. And I did mention the digger, which is the beginning, and then the lorry, which takes to the consumer, and that's it.
Consumer. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm good now. Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Yeah.
Any other question? Mercy Okafor. I have known that you can't. Can you hear now? You were not hearing before because you came in wrongly. When you go into any Zoom class or any Zoom meeting, it will ask you to join with audio. You need to click on that thing. Don't ignore it. If you don't click on it, you won't be able to hear. And they can't hear you. I know that you can't hear me because I've been trying to mute you to unmute you, but that option was not coming out. And that's what happens when the person comes in the wrong way. So with this now we are clear. Now you have made us to enter into our time. It's not fair. But the thing is, does everybody understand now? That's one good thing. There's no need reading, talking, and you don't get it. Does everybody in this class now understand a process graph? Perfect. Can you now write for me this question? I'm going to be sharing my screen. I'll leave it on the screen and I will allow you to write. You have 20 minutes to do your writing. All right? You can write in your book and then type so that you have an information for yourself that you keep. All right? So now I assume that we are starting at 8:35. That's 9:35 by your time. And we will stop at 5 minutes to 10 for you. And then we have some time to round up. Please write everything together. Don't post introduction, post overview one, overview, abi first paragraph second. Please write everything once, write in your book, type it out. I'm not going to take anyone out because I know that when you are typing, sometimes your video can show that you're not there, but I'll see that you are on video here. So I'm not taking anyone out. Go ahead and do your work now. I am here. If you need to ask anything, just raise your hand and I'll see you. All right? The time starts now.
You can't see the question.
I'm sharing it. Wait.
It's not showing, ma.
Okay, is it showing now?
Yes, ma.
Perfect. Go ahead. have 5 minutes more. You need to start sending in your work. Okay, I'm stopping the sharing. All right. Send your work in, please. Well done, well done. Please put your video on now. Check your phone. If your video is not on, put it on before I remove you, please. Beauty, Nkubula.
Yes, ma'am.
I wanted you to put your video on. Okay, so now we have the answers here with us. Do not unmute except you are asked to do so. I like to encourage each and every one of you to participate in a classwork because it helps you. All right? It will help you. It will go a long way to help you identify areas where you need to correct. I've seen some works on the YouTube channel, Folashade and the rest. I must say that I'm kind of impressed. I'll find time to go through your work and give you a feedback. Meanwhile, if you can write something on the Telegram group when I post this, it will be lovely. Please, as much as possible, try to use your name, your proper name, okay, when you are as per your Zoom name, so that um we will also be able to identify you and let you into the class with all that's happening. Before, I never minded or I was not conscious of all of that, but because of those things now, we need to be more careful. So today we are going to, okay, the picture depicts the steps involved in the production or in producing. Do you understand? In the production of or in producing, that's more correct English. Okay, not in production of. Let's not shorten it. In the production of blocks for building industry. Of blocks, comma, you are producing blocks, then you are producing it for. I will take you out of the class, and the warning is once you are out, you can't come in and you won't like it. Cynthia Raphael, your hand is up. I'll come to you. You have not been in the class all this while, and I'm thinking that you're going to take us back with that question you want to ask. So I want to finish up, then I can go back to you. Yeah? Okay, so the picture depicts the steps involved in the production of blocks for building industries or for a building industry. Overall, there are 7 steps involved, beginning with the digging out of clay and ending with the delivery and ending with the delivery to the users, to the final user. There's something about this statement that I don't like. Okay, you can write beginning with the digging out of clay and ends with. I think it will be better. Yeah. The steps starts. How about now? You can say the first step is the step or the process. There's no steps starts. Okay, the process starts with the digging of clay, and it is taken into a metal grid before being transferred. What happens in the metal grid? It's not taken into a metal grid. You take something that, like I take a pen and I pass it through something. But we're talking about clay. It's uncountable noun, isn't it? Can you count clay? Can you count water? Or you say the taking of water. It's not correct. Yeah? So you need to be very careful with the tenses that you use and then with your kind of nouns. Clay is uncountable noun, so you don't take the clay. It is taken into a metal. No. You can say we pass it. It's passed through a metal a grid. That grid is for filtering. Can you not see it? That the grid is more like, what is a grid? Carry your phone. Tell me the meaning of a grid. Tell me the meaning of a grid. Who is searching for us? If I search, you pay me. Who is telling me the meaning of a grid? Thank you, sweetie. Go ahead.
It's a framework of spaced bars that are parallel to or cross each other.
So spaced bar, parallel,
yes, that are parallel,
and then cross each other.
Each other, yes.
What is that? That's a mesh work.
Like a mesh.
Thank you. That's I didn't even know. That's a mesh work. And what is a mesh? What is a filter? Is it not a mesh? Who has ever fried Gary? You know, when we who has ever fried Gary now? We have done things, so we have done things. I have fried Gary before, so I know what I'm saying. It's a mesh, it's a grid, and it's metal. Then they now use wood around it, Abi. Sometimes it can be round or it can be a rectangle. And then when you scatter the Gary, like you scatter the clay, okay, the digger digs up the clay and then pours it into that metal grid, and it is filtered, yeah? And then you can see it there. Can't you see? Can you not see? Am I the only one seeing? See it now, it's a meshwork. Look at it here. It's a filter. So it's filtered through. If you put more life into what you are trying to explain, tell me that you understand the process. All right? Tell me that you understand. So the clay is dug up and then poured through the trash and through the grid, okay, into the roller. From the roller, it is then mixed with what? Clay, sand and what? And water. So the person that wrote this, you need to be more specific with what you say. You don't take the clay, it is poured in. You pour the clay in you pour water, isn't it? When you fetch water from somewhere, are you not pouring it? So you pour clay. And that's because it is an uncountable noun. All right? Yeah? Am I making sense? So it is poured, and then before being transferred to a roller, it is poured in that metal mesh, that work, and then it passes through it to the roller. Okay, then the clay is then mixed with water, and with sand and water, and the mixture with sand and water, and the mixture is, you see, you are using then again, another then. This is the third then in one paragraph. Molded and transferred to a wire cutter to produce the bricks. It is molded to produce the bricks, but the wire cutter helps to cut it into shapes. I like the fact that you have the idea, okay, but you need to know how to put it down. So I hope you take this correction. You can do the correction and post it again on the Telegram group. Let me see that you have learned. I may not mark it, but let me see that you have learned, okay? Whoever did this. All right, following this, I like that. For your next paragraph, following this, the bricks are transferred into an oven. Into an oven, not into, the bricks are transferred to oven for drying. You need to be specific. I don't know if you understand. I heard recently that Nigeria is rated the 4th English speaking country, that we speak good English. We are the 4th. That's because it's not our language. Do you know that in France, they see English as a foreign language? So French is their first language, and then, but in Nigeria, unfortunately, we have made English our first language, isn't it? How many of you speak Igbo and Yoruba to your children at home? You speak English because you don't want them to have mother tongue when they grow up. And be doing do you know that I am a professor? You don't want that one. So we are now an English speaking country in a way. It's bad though. It's not so good. But it's good in a way because, I mean, at least it's one good thing that we have been able to do. That's just a diversion. Anyway, and what I'm trying to say is that we are good with English now on the average, but we need to show that we are good with it, because the British Council is not still accepting the fact that some people are rating us high. So what I'm saying in essence is you need to speak this English to justify that rating that we are getting currently. It's transferred to an oven for drying over a period of 24 to 48 hours. For a period of 24, that's fine. It is then, this your then. Do you have a covenant with the word then? Cut yourself up from it. It is then taken to a kiln. We are taking it again, Auntie. Abi is uncle. I don't even know who wrote it. Please, you need to use the specific words. And I did give us the words, didn't I? I was explaining it, I was speaking it, and I was telling us, I want to see those words. Those are the things that we look for in your lexical resource, in your vocabulary. We look for certain things. Remember the band descriptors, where I said you need to use specific verbs and adverbs and adjectives and nouns and all that are related to the question type that you're doing. This is a process now, and you are to use certain verbs and adjectives and words that are related to this, so that your examiner can know that you understand what you are doing. Okay, it is then taken to a kiln, starting with the moderate temperature. When it is then arranged, did you see anybody holding them? You saw this thing arranged. Then arranged in order, they are kept. Do you understand? So they are kept in that kiln for them to be subjected to various levels of temperature, moderate and high. Then the moderate is this and the high is this, because you are giving details. You need to mention them. All right. Thereafter, it is kept in a cooling. You are keeping again. You can say at this point it's now transferred. Okay. You can say at this point it proceeds into the cooling chamber. It proceeds. Is it not a process? Processes proceeds, isn't it? They move. They like, it's step by step, isn't it? There is a cohesion in the process. So it proceeds into the cooling chamber to cool off for 48 to 72 hours. And then stacked up. It's not stock. This stock you are writing is the one where somebody is following you, like they are stalking you, where somebody is watching your movement and trying to maybe to harm you, or someone that you don't want to see or something. That's the stalking you have written. When you stack something, you arrange them. You stock them up. Okay? So you arrange, that one I'm talking, the one I used is you are stacking it like you stack something into trays or into containers, cartons, and all of that. You arrange them. That's what I mean. You need to be careful the meaning of the words that you use. All right? Stocked up, followed by the last step, which is the delivery. You don't need this followed by. It is now stacked up, and then transferred and then transported using a lorry for delivery or something. That's the final to the final user. Well, to the industry or to the consumer. Everybody is a consumer of the product at the end of the day. It is fair. What you wrote is fair, but if you can take note of this correction and just write it well, yeah? The picture shows the process that are involved in the production of blocks for the construction company. Overall, there are about 7 steps, beginning with the digging up of clay and ending with delivery of the bricks to the building company. This is fair, at least better than nothing. Then, at the beginning, not in the beginning, at the beginning of the process, comma, it's fine, I will accept it. Not in the beginning or at the beginning of the process, because this digging happens at the beginning, isn't it? So at the beginning of the process, comma, clays, there's nothing like clay, so it's clay. The clay needed, if you can say that, the clay needed is dug up, and it's not dug up. When you dig, is a present tense, isn't it? When it's been done, you dug. So dug is already a past tense. There's nothing like dogged. I don't think that's a correct English word. You can prove me wrong though. By a digger, okay, using a digger, and then pass through a metal grid. So don't mention clay again. And when you use and, A-N-D is already a linking word. So that gives you a mark for your linking words.
I want to prove you wrong.
Okay, is there a word that is dogged? I've never seen it.
Which one? Yika. India and I call it.
That's the guy. How did he come in? That's him again. He used another name. He used a proper name. Thank God we caught him. So, I don't think there's a word that is called dogged anyway. So, digging up of clay, and there's nothing like clays. I don't think so. Please check so that we will not be giving wrong information, but I don't think so. All right. Then it's passed through a metal, it's passed through the metal grid, and before it goes into the roller to be rolled. We know that the roller rolls it up. If you keep writing like this, you simplify your writing too much, and at the end of the day, you have too many words, and it's not like holding, it's not really carrying quality information. Okay, then goes into the roller and pass through the mold. Again, you don't pass through. And then molded, you can say molded. After being mixed with sand and water. Okay, so you brought your sand and water. I thought you missed that step. And then cut using a wire. Furthermore, good. That's the way to start your second paragraph. Furthermore, the blocks which are either cut. No, you don't say that again. The bricks has been made at this point. Furthermore, the bricks that has been made, okay, from this is now subjected to heat, isn't it? This person has divided the whole thing from the level of brick. So the person is taking step 1, 2, and 3, and then step as one paragraph, then step 4, 5, 6, and 7 as another paragraph. It's good, it's okay, it's acceptable. So just see, where is it? Furthermore, the blocks that are either cut, no, don't say that again, please. The bricks has been made, isn't it? At that level, from the cutting, we already have bricks, but they need to dry in an oven. So these bricks that have been made will now pass through an oven to be heated for like 24 to 48 hours and proceeds, okay, into the kiln to be subjected to temperature at what level. You mention it like you did here, which is correct, before it is finally packed in storage and subsequently delivered to the building companies. Thank you. I like the last part of that statement. All right. Another thing you need to know is that you should be careful of your number of words. I didn't mention it, and I can't see anybody writing the number of words here, and I cannot count them. I can't count your words while we're making that correction. The picture shows the stages involved in the production of bricks for a construction company. Overall, there are about 7 steps involved in the beginning, involved, full stop. Beginning is a capital letter with digging up of clay using a digger. Who is this person? You don't pass. I was saying it when you were explaining that you should, there's no need for this explanation. Blessing. Blessing, I'll send you Keno. You don't do that again. You don't start mentioning it. I've seen you. You don't start passing through the mode. You are just telling me what starts it and what ends it. Okay? So you dig up the clay, and after the clay has passed through the process, which is something you are going to explain in your overview, is delivered using a van. So you see, you started your statement very well. You now came to mess it up in the middle of it. And that's how we do, even in the exam. And that's the reason for your practice, all right? When you practice a lot, it will help you to get rid of some of these excesses, and your work is now concise and precise, and it carries quality information, which is what your examiner is looking for. The process begins with the digging up of sand. It's not sand they dug up, they added sand and clay. So here you are giving me wrong information. They dug up clay, then added sand after they have rolled the clay. All right, they added sand at the level of rolling. They dug up the clay, filtered the clay into a roller, then added sand and water to the clay to make that mold, which was cut into the bricks. Then the bricks was dried and then passed through further heating, then cooled down for them to proceed into stacking it up for further transportation to the consumers. Blessing, you write this thing again. Subsequently, this is good. It's a good way to start your second paragraph as well. Okay, and you can also bring in these words to explain your processes. For example, the process begins with the digging up of clay, all right, which is then passed through a metal grid into a roller. After this, it is mixed with sand and water, proceeds into molding, all right, and then cut by some wires into what? Bricks. Subsequently, the bricks, now you go over. So you see, your second paragraph, beginning with subsequently, is good. This is fantastic. Subsequently, the blocks are baked in different degrees of heat. No. At this level, the blocks are not yet baked in different degrees of whatever. The blocks are baked in an oven first of all. You have missed that step. So this is your oven that you wanted to talk about, but you talking about different degrees. It's not it. The different degrees are together, the level of the moderate and the high. So first of all, the baking in the oven is the mild one. All right. So mild, stop, a full stop there, then proceed or continue it with the ones that are close to each other. Do you understand? That way, your sentence formation is more complex on one side, which is what your examiner is looking out for. Because when you have a complex sentence, it means that you have more cohesive devices that joins those simple sentences together to give you the complex sentence. All right, Colin, you see that? Because you went on to talk about this, you have missed a very important stage. So where is the information about the moderate and the high? Where is the whatever? Where is the temperature of 200 to 980 and then 970 is not mentioned? Did you mention it here? You just mentioned one level of hitting, which is not enough. It means for your task achievement, your mark will be cut short because you did not complete the task. You didn't report on every process. Do you get the point? Okay, so for this person, you will write it again. Oh. Okay, Blessing, that was 460 words. That's good, but you didn't put everything together. So imagine you put everything together and you are able to take out those bits that are not supposed to be there. You will still have your word count and it will help you. Another person is talking about the picture shows the steps involved. Be careful with your spellings as well, because spelling errors will reduce your marks, please. In the production of building blocks in a construction company. Overall, there are about 7 steps. Starting with the digging up. You dig up clay, and then ending with delivery or the final product to the consumer through a van. That's good. In the beginning, at the beginning, I've made that correction already, so I expect you. Lastly, the blocks is that the last step? That's not the last step. The last step is the transportation. So you coming here to use lastly in the middle of a sentence means you're giving me wrong information or you don't know what you're saying. And if I'm your examiner, I'll cut your marks short. Be careful. Okay. Let's see. Consumer. Let's go to another one. Most of you have got the correct introduction to some point. It's at the level of your overall statement that you have issues. And I think it will be worth you going over again this video, okay, if you didn't understand, so that you can understand it, where I was explaining the information, okay, that you need to put in the overall statement. What I need or what is expected of you in your overall statement. I said you need to talk about the number of steps. This is for a process graph. Remember that different information are needed depending on the kind of question that you have. There are about 7 question types in the writing task 1. An overall statement for a line graph is different from the kind of overall statement you will have for a process graph like we are talking about today. A line graph and a bar chart, they are similar. A process graph is different. A map is entirely different because you are talking about changes and all of that has occurred in the map or location of things, okay? But in the process, you are talking about the steps that are involved. So you need to mention the number of steps involved, where possible, the materials that are used and the equipment, okay, if he's talking about equipment. And remember to talk about the first and the last, because it shows that you have been able to glance through this, and at a first glance you have understood everything that is here in this diagram, and you can say, okay, this is the beginning and this is the end. Now in your overview is more of an explanation of what happens in the middle, what happens in the course of the process from the beginning to the end. And for you to give a proper overview like I've explained to you, you need to have a logical midpoint where you have information that you want in your first overview paragraph and then in your second body overview paragraph, which means you need to group your data together. Do you understand? I'll send in like a screenshot or something to discuss but I already told us in the course of the class anyway. So the steps involved in a process, I mentioned them. Like you're talking about the beginning of the process, where we say the first step is beginning with, okay? And then in the middle, you talk about subsequently, and then the last stage should be lastly, or the last step, or concluding this step is this and this and this. All right? Blocks are produced for construction, okay. Furthermore, that's good. Okay, I think we have done enough. Just I may not have read your own, but I can go through them later if I want. Okay, let me read this last one. The given chart, the given picture shows how building blocks are produced for construction company industry. Overall, you know that an industry can be a company as well when you want to paraphrase and when you want to, like, you are looking for synonyms. Overall, the process involved 7 stages, beginning with a digger bringing out clay from the ground and ending with the made bricks being delivered to the consumers. You see, you have mentioned your digger, which is an equipment. You have talked about the steps involved, and you have told me the beginning and the end. It's simple. This person has given like a simple introduction, which is good. But I need to know how many words altogether. Priscilla, how many words? In the first stage, clay was digged out using a digger. The clay is then, you see, you are beginning to repeat yourself. Clay is digged up, transferred to a metal grid, which sends to the roller. It's passed through the metal grid. Please, it's a filter. You can see it from the picture, can't you? It's a filter, so it's more like they're separating proper clay from other things, because when you dig up, it's not just clay you are digging up. And then this is followed by the clay. You see, you are coming again, being mixed, and it's not this type of being mixed. When you want to use that phrase, then you need to use B-E-I-N-G, not B-E-E-N. Be careful your words. Be careful of the words that you use. Be careful the spelling. And be very practical with what you're writing, please. This is subsequently passed through a mold and wire cutter, which cuts the bricks into pieces. It cuts the bricks, it doesn't cut the bricks into pieces, it cuts the molded clay into bricks. So it gives you the, from here you can see it. You're explaining the process, isn't it? You're explaining the process. All right, so the bricks. Oh, sorry. And then furthermore, and that's it. Yeah, she was able to highlight the timing and the next stage. And that's the end of the process. So in this kind of graph, in this kind of write-up, I want you to note that you have completed the work. You have written about everything, and you have a proper structure in place. All right. Here, I told you there's no summary, there's no conclusion. You are getting just 2 paragraphs for your overview, and the 2 paragraph comes from you grouping the data and then having a dividing line, writing about one and writing about the other. A proper introduction contains the paraphrased question prompt and an overall statement. An overall statement for a process graph will contain the number of steps, equipment, materials, and then the beginning and start point. That's what gives you a complete introduction. And then your overview is where you have those 2 paragraphs. From what we have discussed in this class so far, have you got any questions to ask? Any questions? Yes, Chippy, go ahead.
Okay, well done, ma. I observed from
Your background is very
corrected.
noisy. Your background is very, very noisy.
Okay. All right.
Any other question while we wait for her?
Yes, ma, I have a question.
Go ahead.
I'm the one that wrote the first one you read.
Okay.
So the issue of using then, I don't know the words to,
I told us the steps.
replace it with.
I told us what to use when I was explaining. Then proceeds. can be used in place of then, because you are talking about from one step then to another, isn't it? So in your movement, you can use nouns of movement, nouns of procession, nouns of procession, adverbs of procession, consequently, subsequently. Yeah?
Okay, ma.
Okay.
Thank
Hello, ma.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. So from the ones you've corrected, I observed something on the diagram. After the clay was sieved or filtered into the roller, the arrow that was next after mixing with sand and water, it stated there that it's
It's
either moving,
or
yes, or it's either to the cutter or to the mold. Does it mean
now.
it's saying, okay,
Sorry there. Let me just, you see this thing? Oh, let me share the screen. Share screen. This is the arrow. There are two arrows here.
yeah,
The first thing you need to know is, irrespective of the step that is involved here, this brick is made.
yes,
This is the end product. There's a brick from here, and there's a brick from here. And then it goes this way. So here, this is a mold. And this is a mold. In this kind of mold, this mold is the one that the clay goes into this mold and comes out. As it's coming out on its own, this wire cutter is used to cut it and make it into bricks. While here, you can pour in directly into this and you lift the mold up. You lift this mold up.
yes, and it brings
So it's either, if you need to explain both of them. So it's passed through the mold and bricks are made, or it's passed through the mold and the wire cutters are used to cut the bricks into shapes.
okay.
Do you understand?
Yeah, that's just what I want to, because I observed that some said
mold and the other person said so you
the mixture was poured into a wire cutter and also poured into the mold and bricks are made.
the mixture is either cut, is either used
poured. Yeah. Okay, now.
Or so there are two. Thank you very much for noting that and for explaining it so that every other person can understand. There are two arrows here. This is like a mold as well. This is like a mold, but in this mold, the wire cutter is used to sharpen the bricks. This is the traditional ones we are used to, isn't it? If you want to make blocks, the cement blocks that they make, is it not the traditional ones we are used to? Where they pour and shake it and then remove it and you have a block. But here in this one, there is one they pour it into this mold and then cutters are used as it's coming out. The thing is coming out like you are grinding something into paste, and then a cutter is used to cut it into different shapes. That's the way it is. So it's either this or that. But whichever way, it passes through a mold and then a cutter is used, or passes through a mold and then bricks are made. At the end, these bricks now goes to the oven and blah, 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 and the whole process continues. All right? Any other question? Oyenikon, go ahead. Oyenike.
Good evening, ma.
Good evening.
Thank you for your time, ma. Ma, please, I was the one that sent the fourth answer. And at that time, I was taken out of the class. I think my video wasn't showing. I was going through the correction from the chat page. So I didn't know if you did any correction on my own. You passed that side before I was letting back.
Do me a favor. Go and watch this video again. Thank you very much. Any other question? I actually overshot into the time because we started late. I had a meeting that I didn't know about. It was an impromptu meeting and I had to, I couldn't even answer my calls and all that. So I have spent the 2 hours plus now. Eventually I have spent 2 hours plus for the class, which is always what we do, isn't it? So please, if you have any further questions, something you want me to explain again, the me that you want to explain again is the me that started the class. So go and watch the class again so that you can listen to the me that explain it to you again. I don't know what kind of English is that one. So please, all right, try to watch the video again. Sometimes when you watch the video again, it's like it brings everything back and then it sticks more. That's how I learn sometimes. I don't know about you. In the absence of any other question, please go have a good night rest. Bye-bye for today. Remember to practice. And it's not just attending the class. Start making up your mind to write the exam. All right? Have a great night rest. Good night.